Now, you mentioned earlier education funding. Um, Next year, there's no or very little reserve money, and there's no stimulus money. What is the legislature going to have to do, and what will you push them to do if elected to stabilize education funding in the state and not make any more cuts?
Yeah. You know, we could have done that already for 2011 and should have. We didn't need to make these cuts to education. There were good alternatives available without raising taxes. Here are a few of them. They're the kinds of things that because the governor didn't do them this year are available to us next year. First, we should have built the budget based on the evidence, not on Otter's irrational pessimism. So we just botched the budget. There was $80 million that could have been used to protect education. Second, Tax Commission asked for funding for additional staff to go after tax deadbeats, so they could raise a net $60 million by doing it. Otter's reaction to that was actually to propose cutting Tax Commission staff further. Superintendent of Public Instruction Tom Luna identified $40 million in the endowment fund. It's above the cushion that we usually keep in there that could have been used to protect education. That's $180 million right there. We cut education by $128 million. There were multiple ways of keeping our kids' education without raising taxes. As we slowly turn the corner economically, there will be those and other options. And you know, that's important to do because the founding fathers of Idaho made schools the priority. Butch Otter likes to talk about the proper role of government. Well, the founding fathers dictated what the primary role of government is at the state level, and that is to provide a thorough system of public instruction. As I've gone around the state and looked at the face of these education cuts, that is not a thorough system that we're having. We have in lots of schools, big in rural districts and urban districts, there are not enough textbooks. Kids don't get their own textbooks in many schools anymore. They can't take them home for homework. They have a classroom set so they can use them in the classroom. In fact, in many classrooms now, there's not even enough to go around with the students, so students have to share textbooks during the class. That's not a thorough system of public instruction. We've got class sizes increasing. We're going to 4-day school weeks. In our district, in Meridian School District, they're looking at all-day kindergarten 2 or 3 days a week. We've got a kindergartner right now. That's not the best way that you teach kindergartners. You need to get them used to all-day schools, and that's why we start with a half-day. This is not a thorough system of public instruction. And so for all of the competing needs that we have in state government, of which there are many, we have to make education the number one, and you work hard to protect it above all things. There were good options available. That's not what the governor did. That's what I would do as governor.
Okay. Let's say that if you are elected in November, and come January, what are your priorities for the state? Top 3 or 4 priorities.
Education is certainly one. We need to stabilize funding for education, but we need to also move beyond just talking about the amount of money for education. When conservatives say just spending more money on education won't make it better, they're right. The evidence absolutely supports that. So we need to get back up to an adequate level of funding, which we've dropped below. But beyond that, we need to talk about the specific, most cost-effective investments that could be made for education. Programs or reforms that have been tried somewhere here in Idaho or elsewhere where there's a proven track record of success, where we can see how much it costs to generate that success, we make a rational decision about whether that's an investment worth making. So that's one of the top priorities. The other top priority has to be during these tough economic times to grow new and better jobs in Idaho. So what can state government do about that? I think the most powerful lever we can pull at the level of state government is to look at the more than $2 billion in tax exemptions we have on the books, close those that don't make sense in order to reduce overall tax rates, not to grow government, but to reduce overall tax rates, because we have income tax rates that are too high in Idaho. They're higher than the average of the surrounding states. The way we can get to competitive income tax rates while still funding education is to close special interest tax exemptions that don't make sense in order to reduce those rates. And here's why that's also economically powerful. If you think about it, whenever state government passes a tax exemption, it's essentially substituting its judgment for the market's judgment on who the winners in tomorrow's economy are. Anybody who's seen how politicized that process is would not trust that over the market. In particular, it's the powerful and the connected who do well at getting tax exemptions, and it's the rest of us that end up making up their fair share of it. And in particular, it's also small businesses who don't get the tax breaks. And yet we know from overwhelming research that the lion's share of new jobs and economic growth are generated by the small business sector. So by closing the tax exemptions that don't make sense for the big special interests, we would make it easier for small business to succeed, generate new and better jobs and lives that are better